Yeah, what's going on? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Fantasy's Finest podcast. If you're new to the show and you're new to the YouTube channel, my name is William Spencer. I am the host of the Fantasy's Finest podcast. It is April 18th, 2025. We are in the middle of spring break. My boys are sitting at home, relaxing from school. I got a couple of days off to just, relax and enjoy it with them. And I can't tell you, the spring break has not come at a more timely time. Just being able to decompress and, kind of reset before summer break starts. And my boys are off for school. So it's like, oh man, it's peaceful. It's peaceful. I got the house to myself most days. My wife is gone. She's going off to work. She still got to work. I know she's hating it. I could hear her, this morning when she was getting ready for work and I was still like kind of half asleep. I could hear her. I think she was talking to her sister on the phone. She's like, yep, I'm the only one leaving the house. The boys is here. William is here. And she's like, I'm the only one leaving going to work. I'm like, hey, that's the job you picked. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you gotta do. You got a big girl job now. But what better way or what better opportunity than to get the podcast back on track? To be able to take the time out, since I got some extra time, to drop a new episode. So that's what I did. That's what I wanted to do. So here we are, brand new episode going into the 2025 fantasy season. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the winners and losers from the free agency period. Now, it's kind of cooled off a little bit. A lot of the big names have moved on. There's still some key guys that are still available in free agency, but a lot of the premier players for this offseason have found landing spots. So what better way to get you guys ready for your fantasy season than to help you understand which guys are winners, which guys are losers, which guys you may want to target heading into your fantasy drafts or have an opportunity to produce for you in this fantasy season. But before we get into the main part of the episode, make sure that you're subscribed to the Fantasy's Finest YouTube channel so you don't miss any updates for the new episodes to come. Make sure that you're also following us on audio formats. If, YouTube's not your twist, we got you on audio format, so don't you sweat it. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So you can go over there and subscribe to us as well. And you can follow us across your social medias. Whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's TikTok, Twitter, we're all over there. So at FF Finest, you can follow us over there and subscribe. And please, if you're on our YouTube channel, make sure that you're liking, commenting. We appreciate the engagement. If you're on TikTok too, share the videos, share our videos on YouTube, because it definitely helps our channels and social medias out. And we want to be able to get a bigger audience so that we can continue to do what we love. But before we jump into the episode, we got to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in our news and notes segment. Some old stuff, some new stuff. So maybe you haven't heard this. So we're going to get right into our news and notes from around the NFL. This is going to be a great episode. It feels so good to be back, baby. All right. So first up, you probably saw this already, but I still wanted to mention it because it was something that I wanted to, bring about, or, kind of talk about. Cardinals signed tight end Trey McBride to a 4-year, $76 million extension. Trey McBride was one of the best fantasy tight ends last season. Now he's locked in for the next 4 years with Kyler Murray, until they decide to do something with him. But he was Kyler Murray's favorite target last season. The only thing that didn't clinch it for Trey McBride was that he didn't get into the end zone, I think, until like week 17 or 18. He didn't score a touchdown, but he was still one of the top PPR tight ends for fantasy for the 2024 season. So I expect him to, be more involved in the red zone going forward, but more touchdowns should be on the horizon for him, especially, like I said, as one of Kyler Murray's favorite targets. But he's locked in for the next 4 years. He's Kyler Murray's favorite target. Whatever they were going to do with Marvin Harrison Jr., hopefully they fix that going into the new year. The Raiders signed QB Geno Smith to a 2-year, $85.5 million contract extension. Remember, they traded for Geno Smith. He was one of the other trades that happened around the early part of the free agency period. He traded him from Seattle. Pete Carroll was over there in Las Vegas. He wanted to get Geno Smith. Now he has his quarterback for the next 2 seasons. How do you guys feel about Geno Smith with the Raiders now? I'm kind of like, it's okay. You know, they have the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft coming up, so they could have went and got a quarterback if one were to fall to them. But, you know, they got Geno Smith, so they're secure in who they have. Pete Carroll is familiar with Geno Smith. I guess that was one of the things that prompted the Raiders to trade for Geno. Geno gets another payday. He wasn't bad when he was with Seattle. He was like above average, kind of. But, you know, for fantasy, it's good for fantasy because Geno Smith can throw the ball. Is he a quarterback that you're going to like break your neck to go draft? Probably not. He's probably going to be a quarterback that you're going to be looking to grab or get in 2 QB leagues, like if you're playing in that kind of format. So he's good enough for a QB too. But the Raiders got their guy. The Cowboys, they made a trade. Did anybody see that coming? They traded for Joe Milton from the New England Patriots. They traded for him, and they got a 7th round pick in exchange for a 5th round pick in the upcoming draft. Now, of course, the moment that they traded for Joe Milton, I don't know who it was that started it, but of course it goes, oh, Joe Milton should be the starting quarterback over Dak Prescott. You know, they should go young. They should trade Dak Prescott. I don't understand why Dak Prescott gets as much hate as he does. And if you're new to the show, I try to stay away from the ranting. I don't want to go on too long about, you know, Dak Prescott. I am a Cowboys fan, so it's a little more, I'm a little more sensitive to the situation. But are we serious? Why is it every time that a quarterback comes in, or a backup quarterback at that, comes in to the Dallas Cowboys, he's automatically supposed to replace Dak Prescott as the starter? I mean, we've seen it with Andy Dalton when he came in, Cooper Rush when he had his stint of having some good games before Philadelphia smacked him up. It's like every backup quarterback is supposed to start over Dak Prescott, despite Dak constantly proving himself to be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I just don't understand it. And we've even gone as far as to see, you know, trade rumors about Dak Prescott, some mock trades for Dak Prescott. I remember seeing one on Twitter from Kurt Benkert. He used to play for the Green Bay Packers. He was talking about, you know, it would be a great idea if the Steelers and the Cowboys traded, you know, Dak Prescott and their 1st round pick for the Steelers and TJ Watt and their 1st round pick and swap 1st round picks and everybody gets what they want. And at first I was like, you know what? That wouldn't be a bad idea. The Cowboys get TJ Watt and Micah Parsons. They have one of the best pass rushing tandems on the field. The Steelers get a quarterback and Dak Prescott. They don't have a quarterback. They got Mason Rudolph as their potentially starting quarterback because nothing else is going on for them right now. That makes sense. And then the more I thought about it, the more it sounded dumb. It's like, yeah, but Joe Milton hasn't shown enough to warrant comfortably moving on from Dak Prescott and then starting Joe Milton. Yes, Joe Milton does have some talent. Joe Milton does have a cannon for an arm. He does. I seen it. We all seen the videos. But it's like, am I really going to reset my team like that after signing CeeDee Lamb, after trying to get, or you're going to try and get Micah Parsons done? And does that make sense? You got a completely new coaching staff, and you're going to undercut them by trading the guy that the quarterback was comfortable with in Brian Schottenheimer, and you're going to flip Dak Prescott for Joe Milton? No, that don't make sense. But, you know, and then Bruce Drennan, I can't forget about Bruce. Bruce was saying he had insiders from inside the Cleveland Browns telling him that he was going to, or that the Browns were actively trying to trade for Dak Prescott. How did that make sense? And everybody, they bit the bait And they ran with it. Yeah, the Cleveland Browns going to trade for Dak Prescott. Why would the Browns do that? I mean, they're desperate for a quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but they already have Deshaun Watson under contract. They just restructured his money. They freed up what, $36 million in cap space? And they're going to trade for another highly paid quarterback in Dak Prescott? And on the other side, does it make sense for the Cowboys to trade Dak Prescott and take that cap hit? It's like almost $60 million in dead cap space. Does that make sense? No. And he was adamant. He stood 10 toes on it. He even got another video on Twitter doubling down saying, my sources told me. They told me that this is going to go down. And then Dak Prescott came out and was like, he didn't really address the trade allegations, but he was like, this is there. He put out a post on, I believe, on his Instagram saying, there's no other place that I would rather be than in Dallas, than here, wearing Dallas Cowboys stuff, throwing the ball around like Jalen Tolbert. And I'm like, Dak be listening. Dak be paying attention to what's going on. And it sounds absurd to him. It's got to sound absurd to the fan base. It's just like, come on, man. We can't get into this point of the season already where there's nothing else to talk about but the Dallas Cowboys and making stuff up and for content purposes. Like, is this what we're going to do now? It's just funny to watch. Let me keep going with I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off track with the Cowboys rant, but I got to give you at least one episode, you know what I'm saying? But let's keep going. The New York Jets head coach Aaron Glenn has indicated he has plans to utilize a running back by committee or committee approach heading into 2025. This would potentially involve Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis rather than relying on a primary running back. Now, I kind of understand where Aaron Glenn is going. I think he wants to try and replicate the 1-2 punch that he had with the Detroit Lions. Remember, he came over there. He was the defensive coordinator. And it makes sense. But to have a running back by committee when you have, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, that could be your 1-2 punch right there. Adding Isaiah Davis, somebody who was drafted last season with Braylon Allen, but we didn't really get to see much of Isaiah Davis to begin with. It kind of puts a bad spot for me for Breece Hall. I love Breece Hall, man. Like, I was championing him since he got drafted, even though he was with the Jets. The Jets offensive line was not great last season. The offense as a whole was not great last season. So I get that they're trying to shake things up. Right now, I don't like the running back by committee approach with 3 running backs. Running 2 with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen would make sense. There were even trade rumors about whether or not Breece Hall was even going to stay there because he is on the final year of his contract. The Jets could opt to trade him and get out from under his, potential contract negotiations going forward, which would make sense. Trading Breece Hall and then installing Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis as your 1-2 punch makes more sense than having a triple backfield committee with Breece Hall when you know that you're not going to sign him, or if you feel like you're not going to sign him. It just makes sense to get rid of him now, or not get rid of him, but to trade him now, so that way you can install these two other guys that you drafted last season, or the Jets drafted last season, and then get them going. But we'll see how it goes. If Aaron Glenn is still talking this as we get closer to, maybe training camp, and then it's going to be like, oh man, I hope we don't do this for real. All right. The Steelers could be in on Falcons quarterback Kirk Cousins. According to Albert Breer, should Cousins waive his no-trade clause, there's a chance that the Steelers could be making a move on him. The Steelers are currently waiting for Aaron Rodgers to, make up his mind as to whether or not he's going to take the job. But there have been reports coming out of Pittsburgh that the Steelers are not going to wait forever for Aaron Rodgers to make up his mind, which makes sense. You don't want to be sitting there waiting for Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think that he's completely washed. I think he can still throw the ball. The Jets offense was just not great. He was a part of it, so he doesn't get exempt from that. But the Jets were the Jets. And despite me having high hopes that they were going to turn it around, it just didn't look right. And then they ended up firing coaches in the middle of the season and all that stuff. It just didn't pan out for Aaron Rodgers' stint with the New York Jets. But with the Steelers, with what they've been doing this offseason, as far as, trading for DK Metcalf, they still have George Pickens. They're probably going to take a running back in the draft. I'm not a firm believer of Jalen Warren, taking over as the running back one, but yeah, they got they got something going on over there. DK Metcalf, you got 2 crash outs with Aaron Rodgers. It's like, it's a recipe for an interesting, turn of events for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Aaron Rodgers going there makes sense, but they're not going to wait forever. And Kirk Cousins wants to be a starter. He's got they have their own situation going on over there with the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Penix was drafted inside the top 10 last year. He ended up starting the last few games of the 2024 season when Kirk Cousins was dealing with injuries. And Kirk wants to start. He had a meeting with Arthur Blank. He told him that he wants to be a starter somewhere else if the Atlanta Falcons are not going to proceed with him, and they signed him to a 4-year deal. But Kirk was expecting to be the starter, and it doesn't look like he's going to keep the job. So if they move on and start Penix, I get where Kirk Cousins is coming from. He wants to go somewhere where he can start. And the Steelers, I believe they have the cap space to absorb that contract. And you keep Kirk Cousins for a little while you're, looking for another quarterback. And Kirk's not bad, but, is Kurt or Aaron Rodgers? At this point in their careers, I'd probably go with Kirk Cousins. And to wrap up the segment, former Cowboys left tackle Tyron Smith has announced his retirement officially. He held a press conference on Wednesday at 2:00 at the Star, announcing his retirement from the NFL. 13 seasons in the NFL. The majority of his years were with the Dallas Cowboys. He did a year with the New York Jets last season, kind of didn't pan out, and he called it a career from there. Tyron Smith was one of the best left tackles to play in the game, man. He's a bruiser. And it was a pleasure. And I've said this before on social media, on our TikTok and YouTube channels, man. It was just a pleasure to watch him play. So Tyron Smith, enjoy retirement. It sucks that the Cowboys weren't able to get you a Super Bowl. I think that's something that they're going to wear, with other players like Zach Martin, players that came before him, that they just didn't get the job done. Jerry has to look long and hard in the mirror to understand why the Cowboys aren't getting where they need to be. And he's at the front and center of it as to why, all these great players that are coming through Dallas aren't getting to the Super Bowl. And it starts with him. You can point and talk about the players. You can talk about Dak Prescott. You can talk about whatever you want. But at the end of the day, Jerry Jones has to look himself in the mirror and say, you know what, man, I'm not doing it. It might be time to pass the reins over to somebody more qualified at this point to help get the job done. But that'll be it for our news and notes segment. Now it's time to get into our main one, the winners and losers of free agency. All right, so to kick this segment off, I didn't want to go too far in because there have been a lot of moves, and some of the moves that have been made in free agency, respectfully, aren't worth bringing up. But there were a couple of guys that caught my attention that I feel like in heading into the 2025 fantasy season, we need to be aware of them. We need to be aware of the changes that have been made, where their new landing spots are, and the potential for them to have some kind of fantasy success. So I want to kick this one off with Justin Fields. He lands with the New York Jets. He signed a 2-year contract. He reunites with Ohio State's and dress receiver Garrett Wilson. Justin Fields did not get a good shake when he got drafted to the Chicago Bears. The Bears were a mess when they picked up Justin Fields. They didn't have a great offensive line. They didn't really have a great coaching staff. And let's be honest, the Jets coaching staff is still on a to be determined basis, but at least, Justin Fields is going to be the confirmed starter. He had a good start with the Steelers. I'll break more and go into that a little bit more, but he did look good with the Steelers, but now he gets to be the bona fide starter He doesn't have to be looking over his shoulder like he did with Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson and that dynamic that was going on. The Jets GM Darren Mogi, I'm chopping that man's name up. He confirmed that Justin Fields is going to be the starter for the 2025 season and possibly beyond. This is basically Justin Fields' audition for him to, lock in and prove that he can play at the NFL level as a starter. Justin Fields does give you upside. He gives you that rushing upside. We caught a glimpse of it. We caught several glimpses of it when he was with Chicago because he was basically running for his life behind that offensive line. If there's one thing that kind of concerns me about Justin Fields, it's his consistency with the deep ball. That's the only thing that I'm really concerned about. We kind of saw it in Pittsburgh. He did throw the ball pretty well, but when it came to throwing downfield, he missed George Pickens quite a bit. Hopefully he can tighten that up with a wide receiver that he's probably more comfortable in throwing with or has thrown to, and Garrett Wilson. From 2019 to 2020, when he was there with Ohio State and with Garrett Wilson, he threw 63 touchdowns, over 5,700 yards passing over that time span. So Fields has the ability. We've kind of seen it at the college level. We've seen it a little bit in Chicago when he's not getting killed and sacked, so much. But hopefully the Jets fix that offensive line this offseason. Probably going to have to do that through the draft and add more to protect Justin Fields and keep him upright. But I feel like Fields has an opportunity to do just that. Now, like I said, Justin Fields isn't going to be a guy that you're going to draft, as one of your starting quarterbacks. Let's be honest, it would kind of be insane to do that. But we know injuries happen. I've personally dealt with it quite a few times playing fantasy football. But he would be a quarterback that I would kind of be like, keep my eye on as we go through the draft. Keep my eye on him going throughout the season, because should you lose a starting quarterback, you should be looking to get someone or have someone to target in your back pocket just in case. So Justin Fields could be that piece. And remember when I talked about Pittsburgh, weeks 1 through 6, when he was a starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 65% completion percentage, over 1,100 yards passing. He was ranked 6th in the NFL among quarterbacks during that time, averaged 6.8 yards per attempt. That's solid work. In an offense that, doesn't really or isn't known for throwing the ball over the last few seasons. They're more of a, run the football, play defense, control the time of possession, that kind of thing, keeping low scoring games. The Steelers don't really get in the shootouts. 10 total touchdowns, just 1 interception over that starting period before Russell Wilson came back and they switched quarterbacks and put, Justin Fields to the bench. Now, remember, I said that, Justin Fields' deep ball is a little bit concerning. During that time where he was throwing, when he had 10 total touchdowns, he was giving you about 1 touchdown passing and 1 touchdown rushing. I want to see that passing touchdown total go up. Maybe 1 to 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown per game or something close to that. That'll definitely start turning some heads and be like, oh, you know what? I might have to pick this guy up. So Justin Fields, he's on my winner side. I think that the location is good. His performance is good. He gives you the rushing upside. We just need to see him put it all together over the course of a 17-game season. And if we're being honest, the Jets will probably be playing from behind a lot this season. So we may get to see Justin Fields throw the ball a little bit more. And one more note for fantasy. Justin Fields was averaging 19.1 fantasy points per game over that first 6-week span. He was the QB6. So he was a top 10 quarterback during the beginning of the season. I mean, that's good numbers right there. That's a lot right there. Not a lot, but that's good enough where fantasy managers should be paying attention to Justin Fields heading into 2025. Now, another winner, and this one is a little bit touchy because of where he landed. Stefon Diggs, he lands with the New England Patriots. He's coming back from a torn ACL he suffered in week 8. I think that this is a low key good spot. Now, let me preface this by saying that no, I do not think that this turns the New England Patriots into some kind of offensive juggernaut. Mike Vrabel is over there. He's the new head coach. We kind of got a feel for how he likes to run his team. He likes to run the ball. Is it Josh McDaniels who's the offensive coordinator there again? Like, nothing was really spectacular about his offenses. They're probably going to be in line with each other in terms of running the ball and playing defense and stuff like that. But with that 3-year, $69 million contract, Stephon Diggs has 26 million guaranteed. This is where the majority of the targets are coming to Stephon Diggs. So that's where he could have his successes. He may not, put up a whole ton of touchdowns. He may not have, 1,800 yards, but he's going to be one of the focal points in that passing game. Drake May has not had a starting quarterback. He didn't have a starting quarterback. Drake May is a starting quarterback. Let me say that right. Drake May did not have a starting wide receiver or a top end wide receiver last year in 2024. The guys that he had around him, they just didn't cut it. So the New England Patriots made sure to go out and get a wide receiver for their new franchise quarterback. He finished with the Texans over the 8 games before he ended up getting hurt. 496 yards, 47 receptions, 67 targets. Decent numbers. He averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game while he was playing with the Houston Texans. Wide receiver 18. So you're getting him to not be a wide receiver 1. You're getting him to be like a kind of strong to mid-tier wide receiver 2 in fantasy based on his numbers last year. Remember, Nico Collins was the top dog over in Houston. And for Stephon Diggs to still be able to put up double-digit fantasy point averages, he's still got something in the tank. And now he's going to be that new wide receiver 1 for New England. Wide receiver 8 over the first 8 weeks of the season. The wide receiver 18 was his total finish based on his fantasy points per game average. So that's not bad. Stephon Diggs is going to see a lot of targets. But I personally wouldn't reach for Stephon Diggs. There's going to be a lot of other guys that you're going to be targeting in fantasy drafts coming up. Stephon Diggs should be probably in your wide receiver 2 range. And that's not bad for him. He's getting older. He's still coming back from that torn ACL injury. Now, reports are out now that he's really trying to get ready for week 1. And at this point, it's about 5 months after the injury. He's been looking... it's still early. I'm not trying to get y'all overly excited. It's still early for Stephon Diggs, but you get the training videos, you get him working them legs out, you get him, running routes and catching balls, and he's like, oh man, this guy's a mutant. He's Wolverine. But there's a path for him to have success with the New England Patriots. He's their top guy. Drake May should be connecting with Stephon Diggs all over the field as much as possible as his wide receiver 1. That's where he's going to be able to make his bones in the offense with the New England Patriots this season. And the volume should be there. He should be a heavily targeted wide receiver based on volume alone. And that's where I'm pinning my hopes that he's going to have success in 2025. So yes, he is in my winners column. Stephon Diggs, based on his landing spot. It's not the prettiest, but Stephon Diggs with the New England Patriots, he should see a lot of targets with Drake May as his quarterback. Now, this one is also a little bit sketchy, and that's why I'm kind of doing it now, because the draft is right around the corner. Najee Harris with the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, here's some caveats. The Chargers let J.K. Dobbins walk. They released Gus Edwards, who was he was only on a 1-year deal anyway. They didn't bring him back. So they have a clean slate at running back at the Chargers. And we saw last season, J.K. Dobbins had a resurgent year. He played pretty well all the way up to like the end of the season. He ended up getting hurt, which is unfortunate because he was cooking. I got laughed at for picking up J.K. Dobbins last season. Everybody was telling me, oh, yo, he's cooked, blah, blah, blah. That Achilles injury is going to ruin he's done. He's washed, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't start him until week 2 or week 3. and he was putting up numbers. I'm like, oh, let me get this guy in my lineup. But there's no running back there now that's going to be able to take food off of Najee Harris's plate. Najee Harris comes in. He signed a 1 year. Excuse me. He signed a 1 year deal worth $5.25 million. He's likely to be their number one running back heading into the season. This is where the twist is. The Chargers could take a running back in this draft, and the running back class is deep. So they have the potential to bring in another guy. And they've already talked about it this offseason, bringing in some kind of explosive element to that backfield to pair with Najee Harris. Now, that's the other concern. Who do they bring in that could possibly challenge for that number one spot? Because Najee Harris is not locked in. Najee Harris is going to have to prove himself. And he's landed with one of the best, Greg Roman, Harbaugh, they like to run the ball. So that kind of fits where Najee Harris is. He's a bit of a plotter. He didn't average over 4 yards per carry while he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Chargers are going to run the ball. He has an opportunity where he's going to be seeing a lot of volume. He's going to get a lot of work in the red zone. That's where he's going to be able to make his bones. The guys they already have on the roster, Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal, they're not going to be able to challenge Najee Harris unless Harris gets hurt. So between Najee Harris becoming the starter and depending on who the Chargers pick up in the draft will determine whether or not this is going to be a lock. I do have him in my winners column. Some numbers you should be pointing at or looking at, like, you know what, there is a path for Najee Harris to be successful. 15.6 fantasy points per game between week 6 and week 13. He was the running back 13 with the Steelers. He has had over 1,000 yards rushing. It just doesn't look sexy. Like, he's not going to break a whole bunch of runs. He's not going to break a whole bunch of long games. But he was around 3.94 yards a carry over his career. So it's like, you pick a year. It's like, oh, okay. It's not, Najee Harris is not a sexy running back when it comes to that, but he's going to get you the tough yards. He's going to get a lot of volume. He's looking like maybe a running back 2. I would probably try and squeeze him in as a running back 3. And just, it would be dependent on who I draft. If I'm going running back heavy, he's not going to be my top 2 choices in targeting running backs out of the draft. But if I get 2 really good ones and I land, Najee Harris as my 3rd, I can't be mad at that. And like I said before, whoever they draft, if he ends up challenging Najee Harris, that's where it's going to go left. If he comes in and he starts challenging whatever his running back is, if he comes in and starts breaking off big runs and they're like, man, you know what? We might have to let this young boy spin. And Najee Harris, you're going to come in and goal line in third down situations. And you'll that'll be your role. And then after the season, he's back out in free agency. So I'm kind of tentative about this one. This is the only one that I'm tentative on my list as far as the winners go. So it's like, hopefully, but we'll see what happens with the draft. So right now I got Najee Harris as my winner, but we'll see. Now let's go talk about our losers. Sam Darnold. I'm back on this train. Sam Darnold, he's in my losers. Goes to Seattle. Didn't re-sign with the Minnesota Vikings. Didn't find another spot that was better. Ends up going to Seattle. He signs a 3-year deal worth $100 million in his new contract. Now, here's the interesting thing. Seattle ain't completely sold on Sam Darnold either. They can opt out of the contract after just 1 season. So basically, Darnold is on a prove-it year in 2025. If he sucks, Seattle can say, you know what? We made a mistake. You know what, Sam? Thanks for coming over. We appreciate your service for the year, but we're gonna go in a different direction. So Sam Darnold has some marbles on the table. He's gonna have to perform in 2025 if he's going to stay with the job. Now, here's the other thing about Sam Darnold landing with Seattle. No more DK Metcalf. No more Tyler Lockett. Those guys left in free agency. Tyler Lockett was released. Metcalf was traded. Jackson Smith and Jigma is now the starting wide receiver one for Seattle. And, Seattle, they did go and trade for Cooper Kupp. Oh, I'm sorry, they didn't trade for Cooper Kupp. He was released by the Rams, and they picked Cooper Kupp up. He signed a contract with the Seattle Seahawks. So your tandem is going to be Jackson Smith and Jigma and Cooper Kupp. Yeah, man, like the offense looks like it's going to go in a different direction. I love Jackson Smith and Jigma. I am concerned about Sam Darnold being able to perform at the level that he did last year to help JSN out and Cooper Kupp. What Sam Darnold did with the Minnesota Vikings was something that we have not seen Sam Darnold do ever. And I think it was more along the lines of the Kevin O'Connell effect. Kevin O'Connell he brought the best out of Sam Darnold. And, having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison certainly helps. But Kevin O'Connell got something out of Sam Darnold last season that no one has ever been able to get out of Sam Darnold to this point. Now, I'm not going to be too unfair to Sam Darnold. He did have a great stretch in Carolina before he played my Cowboys. And what was that, 2020? Was that 23? It's like 2021 or something. I'll fact check. But I remember that game because my Cowboys was beating the snot out of him that game. So he had a nice 4-game stretch, 4 or 5 games, and then, trotted in. The Cowboys came to town, put BTA on him, and then, Sam Darnold was never the same after that. But he's in a new spot with Seattle. Seattle's not really confident about him, based on the contract. And then you look at the offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks, not great. Seattle Seahawks, their offensive line was ranked 29th overall last season by sharpfootballanalysis.com. The bottom of the league. I haven't seen the Seattle Seahawks do anything to improve that offensive line this offseason. Maybe I missed something. But if they didn't, and you putting Sam Darnold back there and you're expecting him to turn water into wine, I don't know. I know it's looking like a bad spot. This might be a one and done with Sam Darnold in Seattle. So yeah, he's definitely in my loser spot. And conversely, Sam Darnold's offensive line with the Minnesota Vikings ranked 9th last season. So you're going from 9th overall in offensive line ranking with the Minnesota Vikings to the 29th ranked offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks. Yikes. All right. Another guy I got in my loser spot. You're probably not going to draft him anyway. But I still thought that this was, based on all the wide receivers that were out there, he fits the bill. DeAndre Hopkins leaves the Chiefs, goes to the Baltimore Ravens. He's definitely ring chasing. 1-year deal, $5 million contract. Hopkins is on his last legs. And I hate to say it, but landing with the Baltimore Ravens was not a good spot for him. He's behind Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, for now, Isaiah Likely, and Rashad Bateman. He's behind all of those guys. And they like to run the ball. Where's DeAndre Hopkins going to fit in this offense? He hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in over the last 4 seasons. And this is before he went to the Chiefs. He didn't have a 1,000-yard season with the Chiefs. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in the last 4 years. The Ravens don't have the volume to be able to support Zay Flowers, Hopkins, and Rashad Bateman, and the other 2 tight ends. They just don't. The Ravens threw the second fewest passes in 2024, 477. The only other team to throw less passes was the Philadelphia Eagles at 448. And you saw how those numbers affected the Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers. They had some great games, some good stints, but just like the Ravens, he had some good games. Zay Flowers had some good games last season, but you want consistency out of your wide receivers, and DeAndre Hopkins just doesn't have it anymore. It looks like he doesn't have it anymore. Hopkins averaged 9.2 fantasy points with the Kansas City Chiefs, just 610 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. 80 targets. And that's with Rashee Rice getting injured and Xavier Worthy being a rookie. So he couldn't get any more targets, despite the fact that they didn't have any other consistent wide receivers. And it's not a knock on Xavier Worthy. He was a rookie. But Rashee Rice was their wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs. He goes down and you can't get on? I mean, what does that tell you? Should you be trusting DeAndre Hopkins in 2025? I'm saying no. He's not worth it. If anything, I'm targeting Xavier Worthy over in the Chiefs. And as far as the Ravens go, it's Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews if he stays, because there's reports about, the Ravens being non-committal on Mark Andrews coming back. That they really scarred by that playoff game. He dropped that ball against the Buffalo Bills, and now they talking about like, yo, man, I don't know if he still got it. That's messed up. Mark Andrews used to be cooking. I think he was a little banged up last year. I think he was in a car accident in the beginning of the before the season started, and he just wasn't the same. I will cut Mark Andrews some slack, but DeAndre Hopkins, he's definitely on my loser side. I don't think he got it. I don't think he has it anymore, and he's a wide receiver that you should not be targeting in fantasy football this season. And our final guy for our loser segment, our loser portion, Jordan Mason lands with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I was hoping the Cowboys would go after Jordan Mason. He's a young running back. He showed you what he could do with Christian McCaffrey out, but the 49ers, they were losing bodies left and right. They were getting beat with the injury stick just as bad as the Cowboys were last season. I was hoping that Jordan Mason was going to come over to the Cowboys. He started off hot with San Fran last season. First 4 games of the season, RB5 averaged 18.6 fantasy points per game. He was cooking without Christian McCaffrey there. Then, weeks 5 to 13, he drops from the running back 5 all the way to the running back 50. They were just getting crushed by injuries. 5.1 fantasy points per game before he eventually got hurt and he missed the rest of the season. Now he's going over to Minnesota. He's going to be behind Aaron Jones. He re-signed with the team this offseason. He's supposed to be their 1B to Aaron Jones's 1A, but Aaron Jones's versatility is unmatched. He's way better. He's a much better pass catcher than Jordan Mason. And he's going to see a lot more. He should continue to see a lot more volume. He's a lot more dangerous with the football than Jordan Mason is. Now, I'm not trying to say that Jordan Mason is a slouch either, because he was definitely cooking last season. He was averaging over 4.5 yards per attempt last season. So he can get it done. But when you look at the disparity between the starting running back for the Minnesota Vikings and you look at the backup, because Cam Akers was the backup last season, just 104 attempts last season compared to 255 for Aaron Jones. So if Jordan Mason is going to be the 1B, where's his work going to come from? Unless Aaron Jones gets hurt, he's going to be sitting in the back waiting his turn for Aaron Jones, from Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is going to be the starter. He's going to be locked in. He's going to get all the volume. He's going to get a majority of the passing work. He's just a better fit for what the Minnesota Vikings want to do. Now, they do need a backup running back. I don't think Cam Akers is returning. They don't have any guys back there that can really help out just in case Aaron Jones goes down. But for fantasy, Jordan Mason is a handcuff, basically. He's not going to be able to get on and perform the way that you would want him, especially if you're looking to try and get like a late round running back who's got some upside. Jordan Mason is a handcuff. So landing in Minnesota, I was hoping that even if he didn't come to the Cowboys, he was going to be able to go to a spot and become a starter, and that just wasn't in the cards. But yep, that's the list. My winners and losers for the 2025 season. So just in case to recap, my winners are Justin Fields and the New York Jets, Stephon Diggs with the New England Patriots, Najee Harris tentatively with the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm gonna keep him there for now. And my losers, Sam Darnold to Seattle, DeAndre Hopkins to the Baltimore Ravens, and Jordan Mason to the Minnesota Vikings. That's it for the episode, guys. Thank you for checking out the Fantasy's Finest podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a new episode. We're going to get back to the swing of things. I'll be releasing a schedule shortly so that everybody knows when the new episodes will be coming out, our schedule going forward. I'm going to stick to that. I promise. I want to be consistent, and I enjoy doing fantasy football and engaging with you. So you got to know when the episodes come out so you can get ready. So I got to let you know. Make sure that you're liking the episode, comment, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss an episode. Get that notification on. And like I said, doing all of that helps the channel out. You can also follow us across your social medias at FS Finest. And you should check out our TikTok page too. We got more content over there as well. Some different stuff that we don't always put on our YouTube channel. We try to put, everything everywhere. But, some stuff stays on TikTok. Other stuff comes to YouTube. So whatever your flavor is, come check us out. I appreciate it. But that'll do it for the episode. I will catch you guys on the next one. I'm looking forward to it. Until then, y'all be safe. Take it easy.